Today we're looking at the power of some Necron anti-tank weapons, as we look through the rules for the Canoptek Doomstalker and Lokhust Heavy Destroyer. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In today's video I wanted to talk about two of the datasheets that seem to have surfaced on the realm of the internet, so we get to have a decent look at the heavy weapons that some of the Necrons can bring to bear. It seems that the full datasheet for the Canoptek Doomstalker has been leaked, but only part of it for the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer, so we do know the gun stats but not necessarily all of its special rules. In the video I'm just going to quickly go through both and think about how they might fit into a Necron army. First of all, we have the Canoptek Doomstalker. This thing is 130 points, or power level 7, and it's a Necron heavy support choice. Now compared with the Canoptek Reanimator, it actually has a significantly beefier profile. It has a movement of 10, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 4+, a strength and toughness of 6, 12 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. It is fairly superior across the board. I was really not expecting it to have double the wounds of the Reanimator, as well as extra movement, strength and toughness. I know it is significantly bigger, but still that's really quite a decent improvement. As well as having all of that, it is also protected by a containment field, so it has a 5+ invul save as well. As it does have the monster keyword and is over 12 wounds, some of its stats do degrade a bit. Its movement will drop to 8 when it's 6 wounds or less, and then down to 6 when it's very injured. Its weapon skill down to 5 and then to 6+, and its attacks down to 2 and then 1 when it's on the last 3 wounds. It's quite helpful though that the ballistic skill doesn't actually degrade, so basically unless you actually destroy this thing, it still will be firing at full accuracy. Of course the main event is that Doomsday Blaster, and honestly the stats are fairly impressive. It is very similar to the Doomsday Cannon found on the Doomsday Arc, it just has a 48-inch range. It's heavy D6 shots, strength 10, AP -5 and damage D6. As with the Doomsday Arc as well though, you can only fire it on that higher profile if it didn't move, otherwise it drops to a 24-inch range, heavy D6, strength 8, AP -2 and damage D3. To be honest, the lower powered shot still isn't awful, and it's still going to be decently good against medium infantry, but just won't be anywhere near as good against tanks. It doesn't have the blast keyword on the datasheet that's been leaked unfortunately. I suspect that this is probably an omission, seeing as the Doomsday Cannon does have the blast rule, as updated by the big rulebook, and I strongly suspect that this is one of the slightly incomplete datasheets that comes out in the box along with the model, as opposed to the one from the actual codex. I would be absolutely amazed if it didn't either get the blast special rule in that, or was errated to have it later. Its secondary armament is a twin Gauss flare, which is pretty standard, just a rapid fire 2 version of the standard version that you'll find on your warriors. And it does get this instead of any of those claws that the Reanimator gets, so basically its close combat profile is just hitting at strength 6 attacks with no AP. This guy is comparatively far weedier in close combat. In terms of special rules, it only has that containment field 5+ invul rule. Unlike the Canoptek Reanimator, which got the living metal special rule to regenerate wounds, this doesn't get that, which to be honest isn't to be unexpected, seeing as Canoptek spiders or wraiths don't get that anyway. So obviously we won't know if there's any further things that could help it out in the main codex, such as certain unit synergies or stratagems, but I think we can at least do some comparison against some other Necron units. I think that this thing is always going to be compared against the Doomsday Arc. It just basically functions very similarly, has pretty much the exact same weapon that can only fire if it can't move. Doomsday Arcs are 180 points, where this is 130, but the Doomstalker does have the worst ballistic skill of 4+, and it does mean that their per points damage output is pretty similar when fired against vehicles. Just on average, the Doomsday Blaster will average around about 4 wounds per turn on vehicles, though obviously it's very swingy, both having D6 shots and D6 damage. Doomsday Arcs on the other hand though are possibly a bit tougher point for point. It's a little bit hard to weigh up. They have 14 wounds and a 4+ save, but then they do have the quantum shielding instead of the containment field. I think overall the Canoptek Doomstalkers will be a bit stronger against low damage shooting, anything with damage 1, 2 or D3, where the Doomsday Arc will be a lot more resistant to things with D6 damage such as missile launchers. The Arc does have a few advantages though, such as having more Gauss weapons, a better range on the main gun, though maybe a little bit less relevant on slightly smaller boards these days, and also it has the fly special rule, which could help for repositioning if needed. Overall, I would say that probably the Doomsday Arc is still the better unit out of the two, but I think it's closer than it might seem at first glance, just because of how much cheaper the Doomstalker is. In terms of dynasties, the Doomstalker doesn't have all that much synergy with them to be honest. Possibly the best might just be that new Saracen dynasty, the one that gives you a single wound reroll per shot. It could be pretty good when you're getting extra wounds with quite such a powerful weapon. Other than that, Nihilak isn't a bad shout for most Necron units just to get objective secured on everything, and also a little bit of resistance to AP1 weapons if you're camping out in your own deployment zone like this one might be, and in Sotek you would get a little bit of extra rapid fire range out of those Gauss flares, but it's hardly the main thing for this unit. Overall though, I think it's a useful addition to the Necron army, and depending on exactly how many points you have free and what you want to spend them on, it could be a very decent alternative to the Doomsday Arc for filling that role. So now we're moving on to the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer. This guy's another Necron Heavy support choice. You can take them in squads of 1 to 3, they're 70 points per head or 4 power level each. While the Doomsday Arc has a slightly beefier profile than I was expecting, to be honest this guy's just a little bit more fragile. For me that pretty massive destroyer body just looks significantly chunkier, and I thought it might be going up to 6 wounds or something. Sadly it doesn't seem that that's the case. This guy's got a movement of 8 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, strength 4, toughness 5, 4 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. From the name of the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer, I was wondering if there might be a more standard pattern Lokhust Destroyer on the way. I guess only time will tell for that, but to be honest this profile does look a lot more similar to what I'd expect for a standard destroyer than something massively upgunned. As I said previously, we have his weapon stats but not his special rules yet, as that was the only part that the picture showed. It's certainly helpful to find out the stats for his weapons though. The anti-tank version, the Gauss Destructor that you can see here, has a 36-inch range, is a heavy one-shot weapon with strength 10, AP-4 and a colossal damage of 3d3. Usually single-shot weapons tend to be a bit underwhelming in Warhammer 40k, but honestly they might just have got this one right. 3d3 is at least fairly reliable, and for every shot that gets through it will average you 6 wounds on the enemy. It's not going to take many hits with these things to take out most vehicles. The other option is the Enmitic Exterminator, the really big version of the thing that the Scorpec Lord carries. This one's got a bit of a weird profile in my mind. It's 36 inches, it's heavy 3d3, strength 7, AP-1 and damage 1. Again, slightly strangely, they don't seem to have included the blast special rule on this one. I really do suspect that it will be blast, seeing as the Scorpec Lord is also armed with an Enmitic weapon, and this one's just a bigger version, and the Scorpec Lord does have the blast rule. Again, I suspect that this is a symptom of the datasheet coming out with the kit, and not being the full Codex one. For me, I'm far more excited by the Gauss Destructor than the Enmitic Exterminator. While the Exterminator is very general purpose, it also just doesn't seem exceptionally strong for 70 points. It's really not all that far from a Space Marine Assault Cannon, and I just don't think that that's really good enough for 70 points. In terms of the special rules, I know we haven't seen them yet, but I think that we can certainly make some educated guesses. The destroyers all generally have had reanimation protocols in the past, so that's likely to stay. The previous incarnation of destroyers have the repulsor platform special rule, which means they can move and fire without suffering penalty to heavy weapons, and I see no reason that that would go away. And also, destroyers in general tend to have the hardwired hatred special rule, that generally allows them to re-roll their hit rolls of 1. In terms of the damage output for that Gauss Destructor, it averages about 3 wounds on average against toughness 7 or 8 vehicles that don't have any sort of invul, though obviously it's going to be very swingy. You're either going to get nothing at all, or around about 6 depending on exactly how your 3d3 shakes out. I think this guy will be a pretty decent one to fire early in the shooting phase to get all that very random damage out of the way, before cleaning up with some more reliable units. It also looks like it could be a very good choice for re-rolling a wound roll with a command B-roll, as if you do fail and you basically have the chance of causing 3d3 wounds on the enemy on the roll of a 3+, then it's generally going to be a good shout. Comparison-wise, the damage output seems fairly on par with the current version of heavy destroyers. The gun's very big and flashy, though it does cost significantly more points. I suspect that these guys will be going away in the new codex though, so for some mobile mid-range anti-vehicle fire, these guys likely are going to be the choice. In terms of dynasties, I think again, seeing as it's a massive shot weapon, the Saracen dynasty could be excellent on these, just because, as we said, the value of re-rolling 1 wound roll could be absolutely massive with such a powerful weapon. Again, Nihilak certainly doesn't hurt for objectives secured and extra defense, and I think that Mefrit could be pretty interesting for that Enmitic Exterminator weapon. It's got pretty decent range, so if you could engage some enemies at 18-inch range, then having AP-2 on the gun would make it significantly better. So let me know what you think of the unit rules as we have them at the moment. Can you see either of these having room in your Necron list, or are they just overshadowed a bit by Doomsday Arcs for anti-tank purposes? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for plenty more 40k content coming out every day. And if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I'd just like to mention that I have a Patreon page, which is down in the video description below. The channel's Patreon is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite so regularly, so if you are enjoying a lot, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel Patreons get to see a video early each week, There's regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and you're also entered into the Auspex Tactics prize giveaway each month automatically. If any of that sounds good, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is found down in the video description below. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.